West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Just over a month before they take over, they have to figure out how or even if this current version of the Republican Party can find united leadership with a narrow vote and a rebellious MAGA cadre of newer members. Indeed, some of those people, the younger members who are already in Congress or joining, are already threatening to block the speaker bid of the current leader, Kevin McCarthy, who's still the odds-on favorite to become speaker. Now, the numbers are not yet dire for him. I'll walk you through exactly what we know. In public, right now, about 5 Republican lawmakers, 5, have announced their opposition. So the real question is whether they could build the momentum that might actually throw the whole speaker's race in doubt. Now, this is Washington. I said momentum, and in normal human affairs, sports, real life, momentum is something that happens, right? In Washington, it's not always a natural dynamic, but part of political choreography to create the appearance of momentum. I say that as part of the top story because some of the people involved in this bid on the right to stop McCarthy or complicate his life for concessions admit they are basically trying to telegraph or fake, if you want to call it that, the timeline of the momentum to stop McCarthy. So the idea right now is to drip out a name of someone in the Republican caucus who will stop him and join this effort. Drip out a name every 4 or 5 days to make sure people know McCarthy can be stopped, according to Republican lawmakers who spoke on background to CNN. Democrats say this is already the first test of the would-be speaker's leadership, and he's failing. They say he's pandering to MAGA, letting the most extreme members run wild with any conspiracy theory investigation or impeachment in exchange for their vote. Note the casual reference to impeachment there because Republicans have been so casual about it. Biden brought it up as well. You can tell that Democrats don't see the I word as something to be afraid of, but rather something to throw out there first. If the Republican Party, before even getting power and getting the gavel, is pledging, vowing among some members to impeach Biden for literally anything, which, depending on who you ask, is potentially a violation of your constitutional duty, although the final call on that's up to the House member and how they vote. If that's just going to be bandied about, then Democrats are the ones saying, look, McCarthy can't even stand up to these folks, and he doesn't even have the gavel yet. Now, a final bit of context before I bring in our guests, including former Republican Chairman Michael Steele. Kevin McCarthy actually got here by both maneuvering and sometimes picking times to bow out, to surrender partially to his party's base. You know what Bob Marley said, "He who fight and run away live to fight another day." And that's a nonpartisan piece of battle wisdom because sometimes you do take a loss to come and run again. And that's what McCarthy did. In fact, I want to show you this for context because he dropped a past bid in 2015 when he saw far-right opposition that he just could not maneuver around.
Another shocker on Capitol Hill. House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy dropped out of the race for Speaker of the House.
For us to unite, we probably need a fresh face.
And obviously, right now, the GOP is in shambles.
The decision left everyone at a loss for words, especially him.
I think we're only going to be stronger. We fought hard to win this majority and turn this country around. And this will be our best footstep for... Yeah, I messed up.
Don't leave!
That was the Colbert take at the time. You saw McCarthy seemed or projected a kind of calm about it. And that's the thing when we follow politics. One of the great mistakes is that people confuse tactics with ethics. They think that the people they don't like must also be always incompetent. Would that were the case if someone that you oppose in politics for good reasons were always as incompetent as perhaps their ideas are poor. But that's not the real world. Kevin McCarthy, for all of his many demonstrable flaws and flip-flops, and I say that as an objective matter, this was someone who stood on the floor of the House and said Donald Trump must be held responsible for January 6th, and then went out to Mar-a-Lago and ate up his own words. This is someone who has issues with his own consistency, but he has found in the past that he knows when to duck, when to run, and then when to run for Speaker. With all that in mind and a lot of the fate of the Biden agenda and thus American policy in the balance tonight, I want to bring in former RNC Chair Michael Steele and National Affairs Correspondent for The Nation, Joan Walsh. Welcome back to both of you. Happy holidays if you had a good week. Michael, I begin with that point that sounds straightforward. The tactics and the ethics are different. McCarthy gets criticized and bumped for many different reasons. But in the past, he's found his way back. What do you see now with a even more sort of calcified, angry backbone of MAGA loyalists in this vote?
Found his way back to what? He's still not Speaker of the House. I mean, at the end of the day, look, majority leader is nice. Rather, minority leader is nice. But the reality for Kevin has been for some time now that he wants to be Speaker of the House. And there's a reason why. It's not just conservative members. I mean, a lot of people like to put the onus on the Tea Party at the time and now the Freedom Caucus, but it's not just them. There are other members as well. Kevin was good for raising money, but they don't see him necessarily as their leader. They don't see him as someone who can effectively engage against a crafty, wily Democratic leadership, such as it was under Nancy Pelosi. Now, the dynamics may change since Nancy will no longer be Speaker, but be careful that figure you see in the dark of night. It could be just as scary in the leadership that you see emerging among the Democrats now to follow Nancy. And they are as well seasoned.
Let me push you on how that's going to work and then bring Joan in. You may remember back just post 9/11, there was a lot of talk of why do they hate us? What do they want abroad? I know that some of the Republican leaders that used to be in a simpler time, Michael, maybe you didn't agree with them on everyone, but they used to be your contemporaries, people you could reason with. And those elite Republicans used to say, why do they hate us? What do they want? Whether it's Tea Party, MAGA, or this more extreme QAnon faction, what do they want from Kevin McCarthy other than to disrupt his political life? Michael?
I don't think it's so much what they want from Kevin McCarthy at this stage. It's what they wanted from the party, going back to when I became chairman in 2009. People need to contextualize and understand the Tea Party process began long before 2009. It reaches back to when Newt Gingrich came to the Congress in the late 1980s and began to foment a rebellion, if you will, to use that term, against the structure that had been put in place under 40 years of Democrat control of the House between 1954 and 1994. So in the late 80s, that pressure began to build up in a way that manifests itself very differently today, but led to the takeover of the House in 94. So this has been a long-serving battle among a lot of Republicans who felt that the establishment, the order of things, the party leadership, the RNC, the senatorial committee, the congressional committees never took into account how frustrated the rank and file were about big government spending under Bush, the lack of adherence to the social norms as they saw them at the time. So there is that buildup that manifests ultimately in 2009 and is now metastasized into this thing of white nationalism, grievance, racism, etc.
It is Tuesday, the 29th of November of 2022, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, a small scant dash. A mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. It always has, and it always will. All right, well, speaking of spicy, looks like Donald Trump is up on a tear again, and so is Elon Musk. I think they're in some sort of competition to see who can out-tweet each other in the most insane way. But, Donald Trump is now going after Jack Smith's sister-in-law now. It's not enough to go after Jack Smith's wife. He's got to go after Jack Smith's sister, too. And that's how mobsters work, especially one like Donald Trump. It's been in his playbook. It's always been known. He only spelled it out in Art of the Deal that was ghostwritten for him, but, he told the guy what to write. It's just that Trump can never write in a grammatical way. That's why he has to hire someone. But anyway, this has all been known. We've known about his anti-Semitism. We've known about his racism. My God, he got charged and then had to pay the largest fine in HUD history for racial discrimination in their housing. It's funny, when I would mention this when Trump was running to the proto-maggots, they didn't believe me. No, I never heard of that. I go, well, how could you not? Because, I don't know. They didn't care. The people who know the least about our government and how it works are now running the show. Thank you very much. And then when you tell them, well, look, this is what the Constitution, they go, no, that's a commie document. Take the Bill of Rights anywhere in the United States on a street corner and try to get people to sign a petition. Let's make this part of government, and they'll say it's a commie document. I'm just saying. Commie. Do you get the feeling like the use of Antifa is sort of like how Emmanuel Goldstein was used in 1984? I mean, you're trying to figure out, where is this Goldstein? You can't find a Goldstein president of the Goldstein Club anywhere on a university, anywhere in the world. I'll get it out. Same with Antifa. Where is the Antifa president for the Antifa Club on a university? Not just in America, but anywhere in the world. Because it's not really a club. It's a frame of mind. I don't know what to call the people who go out and confront the Proud Boys and other fascists and neo-Nazis that march up and down the street trying to instigate fights. I don't know. Is that just Black Bloc? I don't know. I'm not into Black Bloc. I think they're agent provocateurs for the most part. Or they're easily infiltrated by such. Heck, even the Boogaloo Boys tried to put themselves off as Black Bloc when they were killing cops in Oakland. See, that's the other thing that gets me, is that Antifa gets caught up in that sort of thing just because people were out there protesting, fascism, against fascism, and then right-wing cop killers go out and kill cops, and Antifa gets blamed for it. Anybody that is an anti-fascist is a cop killer. It wasn't us. So, So you got Donald Trump going after the wife of the special counsel, which is always a good strategy, I suppose. Now, in Trump's case, he thinks he's extremely rich. I'm not so sure if he's that rich. And, you know, people have pretty much taken it for granted that he lies about how rich he is. But he has the mindset of a spoiled rich boy, just like Elon Musk. And I've said for a very long time that, a few decades actually, is that the richer you become, the less attached to a nation you will have. You're not going to have that much loyalty. You think you are above nation states. And so, obviously, the rules will never apply to you. Petty rules of nation states. Don't you know who I am? I'm Mo Green! That's what it sounds like. And he got it in the eye, too. I think it's the left one. You always go for the left eye. I don't know. Anyway, the Elon Musk is behaving as a petulant, spoiled rich boy of a particular blood emerald, apartheid blood emerald type of rich boy, by the way, which we all know. And he's acting out exactly how that would be at age 51, which surprised me because he acts a lot younger. Lots. No, you're not supposed to compare people to what you would do, but I can't help it. I can't help but think what I was doing at 51, and it wasn't being that petulant. I kind of like to think that by age 51, I'd gotten over a few of those issues that I'd been carrying all that time. In fact, I thought I got rid of them, a few decades before I became 51. And then he's trolling Vindman with that weird bedside table tableau. As a picture of Washington crossing the Delaware with an old single-shot type of dueling pistol. And then some sort of weird, it looks like some sort of weird ghost gun. I can't figure it out. Doesn't have a trigger. At least whoever's taking care of the area there took the trigger out, thankfully. Because Vindman had the audacity to think that he has free speech. Elon Musk is out there tweeting that if there's no free speech on Twitter, the whole of society is going to collapse. And what he means is that he is free to say and do whatever he wants, and then if anyone says shit about it, they're going to get shut up and kicked out. He doesn't understand. In fact, Mark Cuban came out and put it fairly clear to him. Look, free speech is what the government grants. If the government takes it away, then that is a constitutional violation. Where's the Twitter Bill of Rights about free speech, Ellen? Or is it Elon? I don't know. I only know what I read. We'll call him Musk. And his followers are all Musk rats as far as I'm concerned. Well, yeah. So, I don't want to see the demise of Twitter. I'm sticking it out. Lots of others are doing it as well. It seems like these other social media platforms have their own peculiar quirks that prevents, shall we say, social intercourse that we've all become accustomed to. That's why people like Peter Thiel, David Sachs, Elon Musk, the Petersons, the Kochs, etc., 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 cannot stand it. That's why after what happened in Tunisia and how much Twitter, social media generally, and Twitter particularly specifically was involved in carrying on that revolution. Boy, they shut social media and Twitter specifically down right after all of that happened. I gotta say, too many of them were far too willing to oblige. Used to be People would say, "I'm sorry, but we follow the rules of equal protection, due process, etc., etc." You don't like it? Too bad. The whole idea of blocking social media is like in China right now with their heavy-handed crackdown on look, it's to keep COVID at bay. There's a different way of doing it. The authoritarian playbook says weld people into their high-rises, and if the high-rises catch on fire, well, that's just unfortunate, isn't it? No food? You didn't go to the grocery store to buy food? You can't get out. That's weird. Yeah, they're now, the police have fanned out through all of these major cities where the protests have been taking place, and they've been taking place far-flung. But the major cities, the police have fanned out and are actually looking at people's devices as they walk by. Get over here. And if there's anything that is hooked up to social media sites or encryption software, they take them away. Not only the phone or device, but the person too. Probably to weld them in to some high-rise prison somewhere. No food. So the authoritarians, their reductive mindset is not to address the human wrong, but to make the mistakes of why these instances keep occurring on their watch. They're deflecting, So let's arrest a bunch of people because I effed up. Gotta hide that. Well, maybe the mega rich should be taxed at a rate that would keep them maybe more civically minded. It's funny, when the tax rate was higher, these rich people had a much more embracing attitude about representative democracy. It's only when they became richer than nation states themselves. No wonder they don't want to get taxed. That feeling of power must be an endorphin rush to troll a U.S. lieutenant colonel, a full colonel, right? Whichever is greater. Vindman served his country and has the mindset of a civic servant. Some people say civil. I say civic servant because he serves the higher and better angels of what this representative democracy is supposed to be about. I know, supposed. Something that Donald Trump has no idea about, and obviously an Elon Musk. I thought, this is the other thing. He goes on and on and on about what free speech is. I thought you had to take a civics test to become a naturalized citizen. He came from Canada. After he got out of, South Africa and, that area. So I think the Blood Emerald mine was not in South Africa itself. He comes from South Africa. But regardless, they get to Canada. Canada didn't want him, so he comes to the United States of America. And apparently, I guess you don't have to take a civics test to become a naturalized citizen anymore, because this is a basic concept of what free speech is about. So, of course, he knows. He's trolling. He's one of these libertarian troll types. So, of course, he's going to troll someone who has a good heart like Vindman because he considers those people to be fools. Is it any wonder he has racial lawsuits coming out of his Tesla factory down there in the East Bay? Oh my. we better get into our curated part of the show. I'm just going on really about the same thing over and over, and I apologize. But that's just the way it is, at least for the hour that we are spending with each other this hour. Anyway, why don't we go ahead and give you a quick rundown about what we're going to be attending to today. And at the top, that was Ari Melber breaking down how Trump's toxic wing has caused chaos in the House. And I don't think it's an appendage. I think it's a movement, his toxic wing. On the rest of the menu, Brett Favre asked to be removed from a lawsuit by the state of Mississippi that seeks to recover millions of dollars in misspent welfare money. You know, the money that he used to encourage the building of sports pavilions because his kids play sports at particular universities. More than 400,000 voters cast ballots in early voting in the Georgia Senate runoff. And the Interior Department proposed rules to limit methane leaks from oil and gas drilling on public lands. No more flaring. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Irish regulators slapped Facebook, I think it's called Meta now, with a $277 million fine for breaching strict European Union data privacy rules. And for the first time since 2014, Australia's terrorism threat level has been downgraded from probable to merely possible. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page is the chat room link. The chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, who does so much more than just monitor the chat room. And we thank Kelly for everything that she does. Thank you, Kelly. To the left of that chat room link, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it would really help us. And I know it's the season of the holidays, so if you could afford to send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink once a month, it really does help us pay our bills, and I'm not kidding. So thank you to those of you who have been so generous over these many, many years in allowing us to pay our bills and then fulfill our civic duty in this powerhouse of resistance that we like to think is albeit a small bulwark against the rising tide of fascism and goose-steppers across the continents of the world. We like to think we're slowing them down a little bit, but thank you for really allowing us to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended so many, many years ago. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, because we're still there for now, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thanks, Tom. And he takes care of a lot more, too. And we thank him for everything that he does as well. Follow me on Twitter while we still can at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary 10 minutes before showtime, and that's where the real reportage is. Or at least you can find the real reportage by going to those show notes and links. And you can find that by checking out my Twitter feed. So there. You can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Okay, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. And it's the time of the season for a hearty chowder, isn't it? Indeed. Well, this first offering is by Emily Waxter Pettis out of the Associated Press. Retired NFL quarterback Brett Favre is asking to be removed from a lawsuit by the state of Mississippi that seeks to recover millions of dollars in misspent welfare money that was intended to help some of the poorest people in the U.S., but instead, Brett Favre pocketed it. An attorney for Favre filed papers on Monday yesterday saying the Mississippi Department of Human Services groundlessly and irresponsibly seeks to blame Favre for its own grossly improper and unlawful handling of welfare funds and its own failure to properly monitor and audit how organizations use the money. You didn't catch me until now, so it doesn't count. Is that how they played football, Brett? Including Favre in this lawsuit had the intended effect. It has attracted national media attention to this case. Oh, really? And that was by Favre's attorney, Eric D. Hirschman, who wrote in the filing in Hinds County Circuit Court. Hirschman wrote that the lawsuit focuses on the welfare agency's, quote, false insinuations concerning Favre's supposed involvement, end quote, rather than on the agency which in fact is responsible for allowing this scandal to occur. Yeah, well, we got the tapes. Anyway, it was not immediately clear how soon Hinds County Circuit Judge Faye Peterson might respond to the request. Favre is not facing criminal charges. I wonder why. He is among more than 36 people or companies being sued by the Mississippi Department of Human Services as it seeks to recover a portion of the money misspent in the state's largest ever public corruption case. The department filed the lawsuit in May, saying the defendants squandered more than $20 million from the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families Anti-Poverty Program. Favre grew up in Mississippi and played football at the University of Southern Mississippi before a long career with the Green Bay Packers, hopped up on pain meds, by the way. And then when you're on pain meds, you got to have something else to counter effect the lethargy brought on by the pain meds, so you're not lethargic, so you can go play your sport. Anyway, Favre has repaid $1.1 million he received for speaking fees from the Mississippi Community Education Center, a nonprofit that spent TANF money with approval from the Department of Human Services. But State Auditor Shad White said that Favre still owes about $228,000 in interest. White's office has investigated the welfare spending in response to questions about Favre seeking to be dismissed from the lawsuit. White told the AP, quote, every party in the civil case is free to make the arguments that they would like to make, and I am not going to comment on them. The court system can see the case through, and the judge can determine who owes what back, end quote. A former Department of Human Services Director, John Davis, pleaded guilty in September to federal and state charges tied to the welfare misspending. The director of the Mississippi Community Education Center, Nancy New, pleaded guilty in April to charges of misspending welfare money, as did her son, Zachary New, who helped run the center. Like Davis, they await sentencing and have agreed to testify against the others. In a September 12th court filing in the civil lawsuit, an attorney for the Mississippi Community Education Center released several text messages about $5 million in welfare money that went toward a volleyball facility that Favre was seeking to get built at his alma mater, the University of Southern Mississippi, where his daughter was playing this sport. The messages were between Nancy New and Favre, between Favre and former Mississippi Governor Phil Bryant, and between Bryant and New. The messages were from 2017 to 2019, when the Republican Bryant was still governor. That court filing said the non-profit center agreed to pay Favre $1.1 million for a few radio spots to help fund the volleyball arena, which was also being called a campus wellness center. Another court filing in September included text messages that showed Favre tried to get additional welfare money for an indoor practice facility for the University of Southern Mississippi's football team. Bryant told him federal money for children and low-income adults is tightly controlled, and improper use could result in violation of federal law. Wells, John Wagner, and Matthew Brown of the Washington Post brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. In the first and only weekend of early voting in the Georgia Senate runoff, tens of thousands of voters cast ballots in the last Senate contest of the 2022 midterms. On Saturday, 70,050 Georgians turned out to vote, utilizing an extra day of early voting resulting from a lawsuit filed by Warnock, the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, and the state Democratic Party. Republicans tried to block the effort in court but were unsuccessful. Among those who voted on Saturday were Georgia residents who told the Post that busy schedules made voting impossible during the week. No wonder the Republicans wanted to stop Saturday voting. The lines also included college students home for the Thanksgiving holiday who prefer to vote in person rather than rely on an absentee ballot that they have to mail in that will not get there on time. Neither Warnock nor Walker captured more than 50% of the vote on November 8th, forcing the two into a December 6th runoff. Democrats have already reclaimed majority control of the Senate after winning a GOP-held seat in Pennsylvania, but a Warnock win would give them 51 seats and an advantage on committees with no need for a power-sharing agreement with Republicans because we know how those agreements go. On Sunday, an additional 86,937 people voted. That number, combined with voters in select counties who voted before Thanksgiving and the 15,305 mail ballots accepted so far, means that a total of 181,711 voters had cast their ballots by the weekend's end. By last night, with all 159 counties offering early voting, even more voters had shown up. As of 4:45 in the afternoon, an additional 239,160 voters had cast their ballots, according to Gabriel Sterling, the top official in Raffensperger's office, who is the Secretary of State. In a brief interview, Sterling said Monday's totals could surpass 250,000 and that even more voters could show up in the days closer to the election. daily of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. The Interior Department yesterday, Monday, proposed rules to limit methane leaks from oil and gas drilling on public lands. The latest action by the Biden administration to crack down on emissions of methane, a potent greenhouse gas that contributes significantly to global warming. The proposal by Interior's Bureau of Land Management would tighten limits on gas flaring on federal land and require energy companies to better detect methane leaks that add to planet-warming greenhouse gas pollution. The actions follow a more comprehensive methane reduction plan announced by President Joe Biden earlier this month. The November 11 proposal, announced as Biden attended a global climate conference in Egypt, targets the oil and gas industry for its role in global warming, even as the president has pressed energy producers for more oil drilling to lower prices at the gasoline pump. Oil and gas production is the nation's largest industrial source of methane, the primary component of natural gas, and is a key target for the Biden administration as it seeks to combat climate change. The proposal would prevent billions of cubic feet of natural gas from being wasted through venting, flaring, and leaks, boosting efficiency while at the same time reducing pollution. Well, who wouldn't want that? You know who. All right, let us now get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
Hi, and welcome to COVID Quickly, a Scientific American podcast series. This is your fast-track update on the COVID pandemic. We bring you up to speed on the science behind the most urgent questions about the virus and the disease. We demystify the research and help you understand what it really means. I'm Tanya Lewis, one of Scientific American's senior health editors. Josh is taking the week off. Today I'm going to talk about how the antiviral Paxlovid may protect against long COVID, and what we know about the effectiveness of the new booster shots. We've talked a lot about long COVID on this show. Lingering symptoms such as fatigue, brain fog, headache, difficulty breathing, etc. But so far, there haven't been many effective ways of preventing it. Vaccination provides some protection, but the only way to totally reduce the risk is avoiding COVID altogether. But there's some promising news. A recent preprint study of COVID patients with at least one risk factor for severe disease found that those who took the antiviral Paxlovid had a 26% lower chance of developing long COVID symptoms 3 months later, compared with the control group. There were 9,000 patients in the Paxlovid group and about 47,000 in the control group. Those in the Paxlovid group had a lower risk of 10 out of 12 long COVID symptoms. These include an abnormal heart rhythm, ischemic heart disease, pulmonary embolism, deep vein thrombosis, fatigue, liver disease, muscle pain, diabetes, and cognitive impairment. And the protective effect was seen in people who were vaccinated, boosted, or unvaccinated. But Paxlovid had another positive effect. It reduced the risk of death or hospitalization even beyond the acute phase of COVID. Patients were 48% less likely to die and 30% less likely to be hospitalized. We know from previous studies, including one by the researcher who led this study, Ziad Al-Ali at the Veterans Affairs St. Louis healthcare system, that people who've had COVID are at an increased risk of heart problems for up to a year after getting sick, even after a mild case. Paxlovid could reduce that risk. Of course, the new study results still need to be replicated in other studies and populations. But if Paxlovid is one more tool in our toolbox for fighting long COVID, that's a good thing. There's some more good news on the vaccine front. We've been waiting for data on how well the new bivalent booster shots work against Omicron. While we still don't have definitive data, a number of studies have shown that the shots work better than the original vaccine against the newer variants of SARS-CoV-2 that are currently circulating. Both Pfizer and Moderna recently announced that their vaccines produced substantial levels of neutralizing antibodies against the BA4 and BA5 Omicron subvariants. Moderna says its vaccine provided some protection against a rapidly gaining variant called BQ1.1, but the numbers were too small to draw strong conclusions. We still haven't seen the actual data, just press releases. And showing that the vaccines generated strong antibodies is not the same as showing that they protected against actual infection or severe disease. But it is a sign that the vaccines are supercharging our immune systems to respond to the virus. The Pfizer and Moderna results are in line with a number of preprint studies. Suthar et al. At Emory University found that the bivalent boosters led to a 4-fold increase in neutralizing antibodies against BA5 versus to the original vaccine, and a 10-fold increase against BQ1.1. Schur et al. Found a 3-fold increase against BA5, but not much of a difference against BQ1.1. A handful of other studies found no difference between the new bivalent booster and the original vaccine. But we know the original vaccine still provides pretty good protection against severe disease and death. All of this suggests that getting the new booster shots is a good idea. Sadly, only a small fraction of Americans have gotten the updated shots. We know that the people dying of COVID now tend to be older folks, especially those who are not up to date on their vaccines. There's still time to get your booster, or remind Grandpa to get his ahead of the holidays. But don't delay. Now you're up to speed. Thanks for joining us. Our show is produced by Jeff Del Vicio and Tulika Bose. Come back in 2 weeks for the next episode of COVID Quickly. And check out Siam.com for updated and in-depth COVID news.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. It doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Can being charged with driving under the influence result in a death sentence?
I'm Tom Hartman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
Although, generally speaking, states can impose the death penalty only for murder, there's what the law says and then what the law does. And what the law often does is lock up people in jail pre-trial, people presumed to be innocent because they are unable to post bail. Indeed, 2/3 of the people in jail are being held awaiting trial. And in jails across the country, in New York, Oklahoma City, Seattle, and Louisville, among others, there are an increasing number of deaths from suicide, and overdoses, and medical inattention, and assaults, and COVID. Consider Matthew Shelton, who in 2022, having turned himself in for an old OUI, was confined at the Harris County, that's Houston, Texas jail, that denied him insulin for his diabetes. After days of pleas from him and frantic calls from his family, Shelton went into a diabetic coma and died. The jail says from a natural cause. The family says this is something that didn't need to happen. Matthew Shelton was 28. As the headline for this New York Times story summarized, quote, "For a growing number of Americans, jail has become a death sentence."
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because democracy and advocacy begin with you, and freedom can't defend itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1832. American author Louisa May Alcott was born in Germantown, Pennsylvania. Alcott is most well known for her classic book Little Women and its 2 sequels. She also wrote a novel called Work, a story of experience. Alcott drew on her personal experiences for the novel. She herself had to go to work to support her family at an early age. She worked as a teacher, a seamstress, a governess, and a writer. In her novel, Alcott tells the story of Christy Devon, a young woman trying to support herself in spite of all the odds stacked against her. In the book, Christy makes the difficult decision to leave her family to enter the workforce. She explains to her uncle, "I am willing to work, but I want work that I can put my heart into and feel that it does me good. No matter how hard it is, I only ask for a chance to be a useful, happy woman, and I don't think that is a bad ambition." She starts with several odd jobs, and the book traces Christy's journey as she tries different work opportunities. The book ends with Christy becoming an activist, giving a new voice to working women. The novel explores issues of social justice, women's rights, and their roles beyond the family. This book also uncovers the changing nature of women's work in the new industrial era. Although it's a fictional account, the book captures the experiences of many women of that age. As Alcott wrote, Christy was one of that large class of women who, moderately endowed with talents, earnest and true-hearted, are driven by necessity, temperament, or principle out into the world to find support, happiness, and homes for themselves.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, because there is a lot more of us where we come from, where it is currently 31 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of only about 45 degrees today, and we are currently under foggy conditions. Later we'll have partly cloudy skies and then overcast during the afternoon. Winds will be light and variable, and then overcast tonight with lows in the low to mid 30s, winds light and variable. And then tomorrow we're going to have periods of rain with winds out of the south-southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour, bringing with it over 3/4 of an inch of rain, and then snowy mix beginning the next day, still in the forecast. Pollen is rated as none outside the window here in Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is good at 24 parts per million, and that daytime UV index remains in the low range at level 1. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.15 inches. Visibility is at 0.06 miles. And relative humidity is at 100%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 44 degrees and cloudy. Paris is 47 and cloudy. Rome is 55 and fair. Kyiv is 31 and cloudy. Kabul is 42 and clear. Hong Kong is 75 degrees and fair. Tokyo is 67 degrees with rain. Sydney, Australia is 62 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 45 degrees and sunny. And New York, New York is 42 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Kelvin Chan of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Irish regulators slapped Facebook parent Meta with a $277 million fine yesterday, Monday, the company's latest punishment for breaching strict European Union data privacy rules. The Data Protection Commission said Meta platforms infringe sections of the EU rules known as the General Data Protection Regulation that require technical and organizational measures aimed at protecting user data. The watchdog opened an investigation last year into news reports that data on more than 533 million users was found dumped online. The data was found on a website for hackers and included names, Facebook IDs, phone numbers, locations, birth dates, and email addresses for people from more than 100 countries, according to the reports. Meta said the data had been scraped from Facebook using tools designed to help people find their friends through phone numbers using search and contact import features. The watchdog said it investigated the automated scraping carried out between May of 2018 and September of 2019. The company said it had cooperated fully with the Irish watchdog. We made changes in our systems during the time in question, including removing the ability to scrape our features in this way using phone numbers, Meta said in a statement. Unauthorized data scraping is unacceptable and against our rules. Along with the fine, the commission said it also imposed on Meta a range of corrective measures which were not specified.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Staff at the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Australia's terrorism threat level has been downgraded from probable to possible for the first time since 2014, the head of the main domestic spy agency said yesterday, Monday. The defeat of the Islamic State group in battle in the Middle East and an ineffective al-Qaeda propaganda machine failing to connect with Western youth has resulted in fewer extremists in Australia. Australian Security Intelligence Organization Director General Mike Burgess said. This does not mean the threat is extinguished, Burgess reiterated. It remains plausible that someone will die at the hands of a terrorist in Australia within the next 12 months, he added. However, there have been increases in radical nationalism and right-wing extremist ideology in Australia in the past couple of years, Burgess said. Individuals are still fantasizing about killing other Australians, still spouting their hateful ideologies in chat rooms, still honing their capabilities by researching bomb-making and training with weapons, Burgess said. There have been 11 terrorist attacks and another 21 plots that have been disrupted since the threat assessment was elevated from possible to probable in 2014, he said. Half the foiled plots were in the first 2 years of the upgraded risk, when the Islamic State was more prominent. There have also been 153 terrorism-related charges stemming from 79 counter-terrorism operations in Australia since 2014. Burgess warned it is almost guaranteed that the threat level will increase again, but this would not necessarily be the result of a terrorist attack, with the overall security assessment taking into account individuals acting alone. You know, right-wing lone wolves. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.